Washington and Spokane voters are famously independent, voting for the person and not the party. Voters want to know the person behind the policy. Join host Sulani Madsen as she interviews 2016 general election candidates for local, state, and federal office on the experiences that have shaped their lives. The Meet the Candidate series is sponsored as a community service by the Ponderosa Republican Women's Club, the Law Office of D.C. Cronin, and We Believe, We Vote. Now, here's your host, Sulani.
My guest is Andrew Biviano. He is a candidate for Spokane County Commissioner, District 2. Welcome, Andrew. So I'm starting off with the responsibilities of the office. How do you see the responsibilities of County Commissioner in Spokane County?
The County Commission is an incredibly important and powerful position that affects everyone in the county. What's different about it is that it holds both the executive and the legislative power for the entire county. So whereas in the city you have the mayor and the city council to balance out and a total of 8 people to make these decisions, in the county it's just 3 commissioners. They write the laws and they enforce them. And there's only 3 of them, so just 2 people can make a decision and implement it. So it's really, really important to get people in there that know what they're doing. And the Commission's main role, I think, of course, is spending money and budgeting. About $160 million a year, last time I checked, was the budget. I think it's even more than that when you consider special accounts. And most of that is criminal justice. About 3/4 of that goes to the criminal justice system of police and prosecutors and jail. But everything else the county does as well, the social services and all the other things the county's involved in. The other really important job of county commissioner is just setting the policy and being a leader for what the county does. It's setting priorities of how we're going to spend the money, of who we're going to be listening to, and how we're balancing the needs of the different constituencies and citizens of the county and that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, the first thing is education, and what's your background and what education do you bring to this position? I
bring a pretty diverse background. I'm a local kid, and I went to St. Mary's School growing up in the Valley up until 8th grade, and I switched over to St. George's School. I got a scholarship to go up there, and I graduated from St. George's in 93. I got accepted into Yale University, where I went from until 97. I got a degree in clinical child psychology, and that's where I met my wife on the first day, and we got married right after graduation. I worked for about 7-8 more years after graduation as a child psychologist or case manager counselor with the juvenile offenders and schools, a school counselor with all sorts of different kids in trouble and needs. And then I switched over to adult mental health with Spokane Mental Health here, is now Frontier, and worked with people with serious mental illness like schizophrenia or depression, bipolar. I decided at that point I wanted to go back to school because I felt like the people I was helping were really people falling through the cracks. And rather than catch them I felt like I had a bucket catching water dripping from a leaky roof, I wanted to go up and get a ladder and fix the roof itself, get some spackle or whatever. So I went to law school at Gonzaga, and I graduated from law school in 2006. I worked really hard, got first in my class, and went from there to being a federal prosecutor for about 5 years as an AUSA, and then spent the last 5 years in private practice working on a lot of different civil rights cases, employment cases, wage and hour cases, just trying to help injured people, and especially class actions where there's groups of people that have all been hurt, trying to remedy a wrong that's been done to a lot of people.
Okay, well that's a pretty varied background. You started off in one direction, kind of zigged back the other, but with the same the same end in mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, in your life experience, so you've grown up here, obviously lived on the East Coast, and what was your first job as growing up?
I've worked since I was about 10, 11 years old, and really haven't stopped since. I came from a pretty poor family. We were thrust into poverty when I was about 8 years old. When my dad got fired from his job because he was openly gay and he couldn't get a job again. In the early 80s, there was no protection whatsoever. So my dad having a hard time working and my mom being a single mom of 6 kids, she relied on us to kind of support ourselves if we could with our own school clothes and whatnot. So every summer I would work. My first job was at Born Again Bugs in Spokane Valley on Sprague.
Oh, it was the VW
The
Beetle.
VW Beetle place.
Yeah, yeah.
And my sister got the job. She was 12, and she hired me to be her assistant. For $10 a day, we would wash all the cars in the morning and all again in the evening to keep them spiffy, and she'd give me half. Oddly enough, I was cheated out of my pay when I first ever
By
job.
your sister?
No, by the boss.
Okay.
She wanted the day off, so I worked both shifts by myself, and I asked for the whole $10, and he said, "No, I hired your sister, not you." And he wouldn't pay me a darn thing. And there's a lesson I learned really early on that you have to really be careful, and you have to advocate for yourself. And that might be why I right now fight for people who have their wages stolen by employers.
Okay, I can see how that would that would open your eyes to that
Right.
problem. So what was a turning point for you to decide that you wanted to look at public service?
I've always been interested in public service. I feel like I've been in public service my entire life, not elected public service, but working for the agencies I've worked for and the people I've helped. It's been a public service type job. Politically, though, I haven't really run for office. I ran for office back when the city of Spokane Valley first incorporated. I was one of the 50 people that put their names in for the city council spot.
Mm-hmm.
I backed away after I realized that I was going against Mike DeVleming, who ended up being the mayor and was clearly going to do a great job and was more invested than I was as a law student at the time. So I backed away. But I really liked my jobs, and I haven't felt a good time to run for public service and leave my regular career. But this time, it took me a long time to get there, but I really realized that all of the main issues that the county was dealing with, the things I read in the paper every day and saw on the news, were things that I was uniquely qualified and experienced in to help out on. We talk a lot about criminal justice reform and the Smart Justice Program and the things that's going on, how we're really wasting a lot of money and having an immoral outcome with a lot of the people that we're locking up that shouldn't be. And got experience as a federal prosecutor. I know what the law enforcement side is and what the public safety concerns are and what it's like to sentence somebody or at least bring someone to sentencing. I've also been a civil rights lawyer defending people who have been wrongfully incarcerated and see the problems when we get overly zealous.
And that's an interesting balance, because I don't know that I've met many attorneys that practice both sides, have practiced both sides.
Nor have I, honestly. Usually people go into one, and I think that I have that, and that's something that if I were elected, I could be chair of the commission that's leading the reforms, and it's better to have someone who's got this type of experience. I can offer that. Another big thing we're dealing with in the county is mental health reform. We've got people being police shootings that are so tragic for both the police and the victim, because no one wants that to happen, but it's because we don't have the services in place and haven't really invested or been really attuned to what's needed, and I have that experience. The other big issue in our county is wages and jobs, and the shrinking middle class and the decreasing wages and finding good paying jobs. And as somebody who's worked on a number of employment cases and wage and hour cases and making sure people are getting paid what they should, I can bring that to it. So it was almost a sense of duty that if you've got these experiences, I've been blessed enough to have these experiences, and there's a place where I could put them to good use, I should do that. So that's why I announced. Okay.
And so if you were interested in Spokane Valley's council, you live in Spokane Valley?
I do, yes.
And your wife, that was a lovely story that you met on the first day of class at,
yes.
at Yale. What's your neighborhood? What's your favorite thing about your neighborhood?
Just great neighborhood. It's quiet. There's a lot of kids there, which we liked a lot about it. I have two boys, a new senior and a sophomore in high school, and they just have a great place to grow up. I used to live deeper in the valley, up by Central Valley, but we're now in the West Valley neighborhood because it's just a great school district.
And that does make a difference when you're the parent. You look for that good school district,
exactly.
Right? Well, we're going to get close to our 2 minutes here, and what would you like to tell people about why they should vote for you for Spokane County Commissioner?
Really, what it comes down to is I think we need to get back to having our government reflect our values, and put people over profits. I hear so many people talking about only dollars and cents, and that's very important. We need to have a very smart budgeting process and respect every dollar that we spend. But sometimes what that does is it overlooks what's really more important to everybody, which is people. So for instance, in a case I had in which a client of mine and a bunch of other people were being locked up in the Spokane County Jail solely because they were poor. We're running a debtor's prison in Spokane County. It's unconstitutional, but it just kind of got by everybody, and we were locking people up for a month or more at a time for not being able to pay their court fines, even though they just didn't have the money. My client was homeless, living in her car, not a penny to her name. She could barely feed herself, and yet we were locking her up and making her life even worse. So, she'd maybe get a job, but she'd lose it right away because she'd go back to jail again. And a lot of people would talk about that as something that, it's financially stupid. And it kind of was, to be spending millions of dollars every year trying to squeeze money out of poor people that they don't have. And so we end up net loss. But what we haven't done is gone back to remember it's much more than just financially wrong. It's morally wrong. We should not be using government to hurt people. In this case, we were. We were taking somebody who really didn't need this, and it was wrong, and who needed our compassion and our support, and making her life even worse. And that's true about people with mental illness. It's true about trying to help people with domestic violence, children growing up with clean and safe water and air, neighborhoods. And I would like to let this office be used as a way to remind people that we are better than just penny pinchers, and we can use our money in a way that's fiscally sound as well as morally and ethically sound, and that will make us all boats will rise.
It's a lovely aspirational statement. I appreciate that very much,
You're
Andrew.
welcome.
Thank you for coming and joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Meet the Candidate is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. The Meet the Candidate series is sponsored as a community service by the Ponderosa Republican Women's Club, the Law Office of D.C. Cronin, and We Believe, We Vote. All Meet the Candidate conversations are posted on our YouTube channel, posted as a podcast on our website, and will be featured in our 24/7 live stream. Find us at SpokaneTalksOnline.com.